So let's say you're looking at flights between Stockholm, Sweden and Oslo, Norway. You make your search and are dumbfounded to find that one of your options, most likely the cheapest option, is Ethiopian Airlines. And sure enough, this is not a code share, this is not a glitch, this is indeed a real flight. But how does this all work? How is it possible to fly Africa's largest airline within Scandinavia? Well, I hope you'll join me today as we discover the best way to fly between Sweden and Norway. It's 3:30 a.m., so a good very early morning from the Comfort Hotel just beside Stockholm's Arlanda Airport. I spent 2 nights at this property and absolutely loved my stay. With an amazing free breakfast and comfortable rooms, you really can't go wrong. While not directly connected to the terminals, the Comfort Hotel is just a few steps away from the Sky City Bridge. And I say bridge, but it is technically more like a walkway taking you from the hotel area to Sky City, which is basically a shopping and dining area between Arlanda Terminals 4 and 5. Sky City is also where you'll access Arlanda Central Station for most trains into Stockholm and elsewhere in Sweden. The only exception is the Arlanda Express that exclusively serves Arlanda North and Arlanda South stations. This morning, we're departing from Terminal 5, Arlanda's largest terminal that serves both domestic and international flights, including those in the Schengen area. It's also the primary terminal serving non-Schengen flights, meaning all of the long-haul international airlines operate from here. Ethiopian operates 2 daily departures from Stockholm, our 6:40 a.m. flight to Oslo, and then the 9:20 p.m. flight to Addis Ababa. The way this works is that the aircraft flies first from Addis Ababa to Oslo via Stockholm. Once it reaches Oslo, the aircraft spends the entire day on the ground and doesn't depart until the evening to better align with connecting flights in Addis Ababa. As it begins the return journey, the flight once again stops in Stockholm before departing onwards to Addis Ababa. Now, even though I'm flying just to Oslo, I showed up around 2.5 hours early, and I'll explain why in a moment. Understandably, not many people fly Ethiopian just between Stockholm and Oslo. The evening flight straight to Addis Ababa is much busier. That must explain why I ended up waiting around 30 minutes for someone to show up at the check-in desk, even though the departure board stated that check-in was open. Still, check-in was very quick and easy, and I didn't get a picture of my boarding pass, but it was entirely unmarked. It was just like your average boarding pass, but aside from the flight number, there was no indication of it being an Ethiopian Airlines flight, with no airline logos, advertisements, nothing. Security check this morning was fine. The system here in Arlanda is pretty efficient, but regardless, my bag got searched and I got the pat-down treatment as well. But after security, you pass through duty-free, and I've said this before, I always love when duty-free shops offer local products and souvenirs, and not just the usual chocolates and perfumes. Despite being the oldest terminal at the airport, Arlanda Terminal 5 recently went through a massive renovation, and this is the main retail and food court just after security, and it really is quite something. Now, here's the reason why I showed up so early even though I'm only flying to Oslo. Norway is part of the Schengen area, which is a group of 29 European countries that have abolished border controls, meaning you essentially fly between them as you would a domestic passenger. Regardless, the Ethiopian flights between Stockholm and Oslo and vice versa operate outside of Schengen, meaning even if you're just flying between the two cities, you still clear passport control and immigration. And speaking of, leading up to this flight, I received this email from Ethiopian warning me that I'd need a multiple Schengen visa when flying between Stockholm and Oslo. This, I believe, actually only applies to passengers coming from Ethiopia, and because I have a US passport, I don't need any visas to enter or travel within the Schengen area. This morning, passport control took around 20 minutes, so if convenience is your thing, fly SAS or Norwegian, but at least by taking the Ethiopian flight, it's a small hack if you enjoy collecting passport stamps. The non-Schengen departures area in Stockholm is basically one long hallway with just a few retail options. The gates all have their own holding rooms that are separate from the main hallway by glass doors, but there's no extra security checks. The gate areas themselves are quite nice, with lots of seating and workstations. Now, for those wondering, yes, regular people actually do fly Ethiopian between Stockholm and Oslo, but of course, it's not many. This morning, as far as I could tell, there were fewer than 10 people boarding from Stockholm. But why does this flight operate outside of Schengen? Well, if it's not clear by now, it's because the aircraft arrives from Ethiopia, which is outside of Schengen, and so passengers disembarking in Stockholm have to clear passport control. And then similarly, passengers boarding the evening flight from Stockholm to Addis Ababa are actually leaving the Schengen area, so they have to clear passport control anyway. Now, as for the main question of this video, why can you fly Ethiopian within Scandinavia in the first place? We'll get to that once we're in the air. Ethiopian's Boeing 787-9 seats 315 passengers, with 30 seats in Cloud 9 business class and 285 in economy. There's actually two variations of the 787-9s, but the only difference is in business class. Now, one thing I really appreciate about Ethiopian is that seat selection is free for economy class passengers, and today I'll be in 35A. I found the seats to be really comfortable as well, with fabric covers and adjustable headrest. Each seat features a personal entertainment screen followed by a tray table and a large seat pocket. I also found the legroom to be really nice, but that might also be because I had the entire row to myself. While the entertainment system is fully touchscreen, the remote is also available in the armrest. In terms of in-seat power, the entertainment screen has a USB-A port, and then universal outlets are found between seats. Personal air vents are available too, but the one above my seat was making a really loud crackling noise. So for those wondering, passengers flying from Addis Ababa to Oslo remain on board during the 1-hour Stockholm layover. That said, the cabin is not serviced again during that time. The cleaning only happens after everyone exits in Oslo. But aside from some messy seat covers and some litter on the floor, the cabin wasn't super dirty.
Copies provided on the aircraft, including the laboratory chamber with the laboratory food filter, is provided to you in ሲኖር የሚነሳበትና በእንዳያልፍበት ጊዜ ሁሉ ለኤሌክትሮኒክስ መሳሪያዎች መዘጋት ይኖርባቸዋል።
Set your mobile phone to flight mode. For takeoff and landing, please switch all electronic devices off and start on the way.
ድንገት ለአደጋ ጊዜ መውጫ የሚያገለግሉ ከፊት ከመሀልና ከኋላ የአውሮፕላኑ ክፍሎች የሚገኙ 8 በሮች አሉ።
This Boeing 787 aircraft has 8 emergency exit doors, which are located on each side of the cabin at the front.
በሚያደርገው ዝግጅት የመቀመጫ ጠረጴዛዎችን ታጠቁ፣ የወንበሮቻችሁን አላድጋ ታቃሉ፣ እንዲሁም ከፊት ለፊታችሁ የሚገኘውን ጠረጴዛ ወደ ቦታው መልሱ እንጠይቃለን።
Ladies and gentlemen, in preparation for takeoff, may I now remind you to fasten your seatbelts.
Now, with this flight being just 40 minutes long, there's not much use out of the in-flight entertainment, but from what I could tell, the content selection is decent, and there's a good worldwide variety on offer too, alongside games and audio options. The 3D moving map is also detailed and helpful to have, and this is really all I used during the flight. The service on this short flight consisted of just beverages, with flight attendants coming around with trays offering water, orange, or apple juice. Overall, I didn't expect much, but even this small service was much appreciated. So I'm on this Ethiopian Airlines plane flying just between Sweden and Norway. How is this even possible? Well, this type of flight is called a fifth freedom flight, and I'll leave a link in the description where you can read about the various so-called freedoms of the air. A fifth freedom flight is when an airline has the right to fly between two foreign countries on a country that originates or terminates in the airline's own country. Ethiopian by far operates the most fifth freedom flights of any airline. While most of its examples are within the African continent, it also operates some in Asia, Europe, and even one between Africa and North America, that being Abidjan to New York JFK. Now, speaking of Ethiopian and North America, all but one of its flights to the continent stop over in Rome for refueling. These are called second freedom flights, meaning if an airline is flying between two countries, it has the right to make a technical stop in another country along the way for things like refueling, for example. It just can't offload or board new passengers and cargo during that stop. This is the case for Ethiopian's flights to Toronto, Newark, Chicago, Washington Dulles, and Atlanta, and it only exists for the flights to North America. The return flights are all non-stop. And the only reason this refueling stop even exists in the first place is because of operational constraints in Addis Ababa. Now, back to this flight. In general, there's not enough demand between Stockholm or Oslo and Addis Ababa to justify each city having non-stop flights, and this is actually the case with most of Ethiopian's European destinations. Therefore, many of Ethiopian's European operations combine two European cities onto one flight, but they only have fifth freedom rights on a handful of them. Aside from Stockholm and Oslo, Ethiopian also has fifth freedom rights between Geneva and Manchester, and Milan and Zurich. From what I've seen though, Stockholm-Oslo is the cheapest option, and the tickets are a little more expensive if you fly the other way from Oslo to Stockholm. So if you're looking to fly between Stockholm and Oslo, Ethiopian is usually the cheapest option, with tickets as low as $42 one way. I paid 477 Swedish krona or $50 for this one-way flight. Even despite the price, Ethiopian offers by far the best value because unlike SAS and Norwegian, who will make you pay for either baggage or seat selection, both of those are complimentary even on Ethiopian's cheapest tickets. I will say, however, Ethiopian's website and mobile app are a little old-fashioned, but they still work. Ethiopian's flights between Stockholm and Oslo are also the only fifth freedom routes in all of Scandinavia. To my knowledge, there was only one other recent example, that being Pakistan International Airlines between Oslo and Copenhagen and vice versa, until PIA got banned from Europe in 2020. But with PIA slowly resuming European flights, I really hope that service comes back because I would have loved to fly it. In fact, the last time I flew a fifth freedom route was in 2011 on PIA between Barcelona and Chicago. Granted, I was flying the entire journey to and from Pakistan, but still, PIA used to have fifth freedom rights between Chicago and Barcelona. Now that we've reached Oslo, everyone will disembark the aircraft and this plane will sit on the ground for 11 hours until departing back to Stockholm and Addis Ababa at 7:45 that evening. Passport control this morning was not busy at all, and within 10 minutes my passport was stamped and I was through. And nothing says welcome to Norway more than snowfall, and to be honest, I'm glad I got to see at least some snow while in Scandinavia because it wasn't snowing in Stockholm or Copenhagen. I really hope you've enjoyed this video on arguably one of the coolest flights I've ever taken. I really enjoyed flying Ethiopian and hope to fly them long haul someday from Chicago. Now I have to say, my American mind was always super appreciative of how most major European airports have frequent, direct, high-speed rail connections to the city centers because we barely have those back home. For now, my plan is to catch the Flytog Airport Express train into Oslo to try and explore the city. Now, spoiler alert, because of the weather, that didn't really work out and I spent most of my day at my hotel by the airport. Still, I had an eventful day in Oslo, which I'll cover a bit in the next video. Until then, thank you so much for tuning in today, and until I see you next time, take care and goodbye.